to our audience at home, to our audience here, to our panel. We welcome them, the Conservative Mayor of London, Boris Johnson, from the Cabinet, the Liberal Democrat Energy Secretary, Ed Davey, Labour's former Olympics Minister, Tessa Jowell, the Daily Mail columnist, Melanie Phillips, and the comedian Russell Brand. Thank you very much. Our first question from Weng Ang, please. Weng Ang.
Should we jail reckless bankers, and which bankers would the panel wish to be prosecuted?
Should we jail reckless bankers, a proposal that came up this week, and which bankers would the panel wish to see prosecuted? Boris Johnson.
I think you should certainly jail anybody who's guilty of criminal behaviour. And I think that you have to... The trouble at the moment, I think what people find so frustrating is that for all the grievous mistakes, the semi-criminal the bankers got up to in the period leading up to the crash, absolutely nobody has been so far successful. Nobody has been sent to prison. There's a huge amount of anger about that.
What could you send people to prison for?
So
what could you send a banker to prison for?
The trouble is, at the moment, that statute doesn't really cope with the kind of things that they were up to. So what you would need to do is frame some law that said that if they were going to imperil the assets or the savings of their customers with the risky behaviour, the addictively risky behaviour that they got up to, then they should face some sort of penalty. You could imagine... You could imagine a criminal sanction or a law against such behaviour.
But how do you distinguish bad judgment as a banker from a kind of willful criminal attempt to take people's savings off? And
well, I mean, that would be a matter for the court. And that
but is it easy?
No, I don't think it would be very easily done. And I think that you've got to be very careful how you drive. And I would make 4 or 5 years to the whole thing exploded is, yes, by all means, let's regulate these people and let's make it absolutely clear to them that they got it wrong. But I really don't see any long-term advantage to this city or this country in continuing with an orgy of banker bashing financial services when, don't forget, I know this is an unpopular point, but it is worth making, there are hundreds of thousands of people in this city who are not on big incomes, who don't take huge bonuses, who are earning very, very modest salaries, but whose livelihoods and the livelihoods of their families depend entirely on the success of financial services in London. Don't forget that fact. Don't imperil London's position as the greatest financial capital on earth.
Maybe we have a number of bankers and financiers here. You say in the centre there, Inspector.
If anyone has read the Stanford prison experiment, it shows that good people do bad things if the system lets them do it. So I wonder how much the system is to blame rather than the individuals.
Ed Davey.
I think the gentleman has a point, and the interesting thing about this Commission's report is it doesn't just say jail the bankers. I think if there is a new criminal it will be a high, that would be the ultimate sanction. But the Commission also talks about ensuring that there's individual responsibility, that the systems are... Some of the people at the top of these banks were able to say, well, we didn't know what was going on. We didn't understand the risks our banks were taking. That's just not acceptable. And look at the mess it's got our banking system in, our economy in. So we're right to start taking these measures. Now, the government has been acting. We haven't just sat around doing nothing. We've got the biggest set of reforms to the British banking system ever. We've now got a new regulatory system with the Bank of England in charge. We've ring-fenced the casino banks from the banks that you and I invest in. We've got the toughest regime on bankers' bonuses in the world. So we've done a whole range of things. The good thing about this Banking Commission is it gives us another set of ideas to make sure we reform our banks. Boris is right. Banks play a critical role in our economy, but I don't think there's enough competition in the banking sector.
Who would you like to see
these reforms and take them further?
Mr. Wing said, who would you like to see prosecuted? Got anybody you'd like to see prosecuted?
What we shouldn't do...
I mean, you've got the record of what's happened.
Before the offence is even brought in, we shouldn't start retrospectively applying it.
OK. An orgy of banker bashing is what we're in for, Russell Brand. Do you think that's what's happening?
I think an orgy of any kind would be great. But one that focuses on banker bashing would be the best kind of orgy I can imagine. Hey, what you said, mate, was wicked, I thought, saying that the system itself inherently encourages that kind of behaviour. When looking for the culprits and who to prosecute after these transgressions, look for the people that after that crash, where loads of ordinary people lost loads and loads of money, look for the people that have got loads of bonuses and loads of money. They're the people that are criminal. Those are the people that need to be prosecuted. And whilst to a degree we have to placate the city because our economy is built on it, don't you think it's happened a bit too much that they can behave in this rampaging manner while ordinary people continue to suffer? I think that we need to see punitive measures immediately employed so that it doesn't continue to recur, not just because of some weird lefty agenda, but because if there are not penalties, the behaviour will happen cyclically. So people need to go down, and it's the people that have got the money that need to go down.
Right. You're in the third row, yes. The person with spectacles, yes, you are.
If we're going to prosecute bankers for making mistakes, surely we should also prosecute politicians for lying.
Yeah. Melanie Phillips.
Well, I have great sympathy with that point of view, and I think that's what the gentleman who referred to the system was getting at. I mean, there may well be good reason for bringing in a new criminal offence, and there may well be individual bankers who should be deemed to be guilty and should be prosecuted and should be found guilty of that or other offences. But I think that it's very easy to kind of whip up a sort of witch-hunty atmosphere against bankers. I mean, one of the reasons why the banking crisis happened was not simply the greed of individual bankers, be that as it may. It was the fact that the Bank of England took its eye off the ball. The Treasury basically said, let rip. We are going to lift up the regulatory system in order to let rip because we want to get the money coming in. And, you know, there is a responsibility for politicians to bear in all this. I'm not saying they should be prosecuted, but it's very easy to single out bankers. I mean, everyone hates bankers, don't they? We all hate bankers because they're rich. It's so easy to raise a cheer against bankers, isn't it? But actually, it may be that other people are responsible. And it may be that, as someone has said, when you think about it, when you look at what they actually did, is it always going to be so easy to decide when it was a bad judgment which is culpable, negligent, incompetent, and where that shades into kind of deliberate and even malicious recklessness? I think we all feel that recklessness should be punished, but I think that we have to be very careful not to just damn everybody.
I don't know, like, Melanie, what I'm thinking is that incompetence of that degree that has those kind of consequences is indistinguishable from malice, in my opinion. And do you think it might be likely that if 50% of Tory party funding comes from bankers, it might be hard for them to think of ways of penalising their mates? That's where they get half their funding. If I was 50% funded by people, I would be reluctant to penalise them. That's how it works. When you're saying the politicians and the bankers, there ain't that much of a distinction, as far as I can work out.
Yeah. OK.
I think I'm with you, Russell, on that last point, because I think one of the chap with spectacles who asked the question about how do you target the right culprits, that seems to me to be the key problem. Yes, you probably could frame a law that would stop bankers who took extreme risks with other people's money, but what about the Labour government? Who were in power in the period, as Melanie indicates, leading up to the crisis. There they were, sitting there deregulating. Gordon Brown went to the City of London in June 2007 and said, we are entering a golden age of banking and the City of London. And what kind of signal did that send to those people?
All right.
Now, should Gordon Brown be sent to prison?
Yes.
Well, Tessa Jowell, she was part of that government. Should she be sent to prison?
Tessa Jowell.
I sincerely hope not. I'd go and visit Tessa in prison.
She might not welcome that.
She might want to get
Tessa Jowell.
Okay, just to first of all to answer the question. Yes, it is right that criminal sanctions are introduced. Why? Because of the scale of damage that the malpractice, the incompetence, the malevolent practice by some bankers, completely unaccountable because of the scale of damage that it did to the economy. And yes, it is right that our economy is very heavily dependent, has been very heavily dependent on the tax receipts from the financial services and from the banks. And yes, it is right that financial services and the banks were underregulated and were underregulated while we were in government, and we have recognised that. But what is also important to recognise is that the Tories, and I think even you, Boris, were saying even in that underregulated time, the banks were too regulated. So there are a lot of lessons to be learned from this. And the fact is that criminal sanctions will be one thing, but also let's hear it for women on the trading floor, women in the boardrooms, changing the culture of banking. Because it's the culture that was as much to blame as the behaviour of irresponsible and reprehensible but too well-rewarded individuals.
Why women? Do they behave differently on the floor of banks?
Absolutely.
What?
I mean, there's
Are they less
plenty,
competitive than the men?
there's plenty of evidence
less
to
alpha
show
males bashing each other?
Absolutely right.
Do you think it would have been better if there'd been a female,
you've answered your own question.
A female Prime Minister who wouldn't have recklessly racked up the deficit in the way that Gordon Brown did?
Christine,
maybe that would have been better. Margaret Thatcher, for instance.
Boris, you know perfectly well that the deficit was principally
she wouldn't have let it happen.
Was principally caused by the global collapse of the financial crisis.
I gave the man with spectacles there who I wanted to bring in before but didn't quite manage to, and then I'll come to you. Yes.
I'm really concerned about our expectation of bankers to be of what's acceptable in that environment. There were no rules. They were able to push the boundaries to the absolute apex of what was acceptable. So I think we don't need to look back on what we should be doing, but we need to look forward about what we need to do to make sure, because they do, at the end of the day, it's a very aggressive job and they do make money for our pensions. So we need them, we just need them to be more responsible, not to knock them.
And you, the woman there in the second row.
I agree with Tessa that the Conservative Party supported the deregulation of the banks and that they shouldn't forget that. But I'm one of those people that Boris mentioned who work in one of these banks, one of these moderately paid people who works in these banks. And what I think is important is that there are plenty of people there who do work hard and who do work honestly, but that there's not enough of us, and that then it seems something needs to be done to support people who do want to work honestly within these organisations to make them better.
Are you, I don't want to intrude on your professional life, but are you in a position where you have people above you whose behaviour you're critical of or despise? Are you forced to do things you don't want to do? Don't lose your job on air,
I've actually resigned my position, so perhaps I'm in a better position to answer that question.
Then you can answer it then.
I wouldn't ever say that I've been forced to do anything wrong, certainly not. But I would say that there are behaviours that I have seen, witnessed, almost on a daily basis that I'm certainly critical of. Compliance issues that people just laugh off. And that shouldn't be the case. That shouldn't be allowed to happen. Perhaps there needs to be some external but in-house regulation.
And is this in a big trading bank, or is it in a sort of a merchant bank or whatever?
An investment bank.
Investment bank, yes. And the woman there in the fourth row.
I'd just like to hear the rest of Tessa's point about how women perform in banks and boardrooms before she was rudely interrupted.
OK, before you were rudely interrupted, Tessa.
Absolutely.
Probably by me.
That's all right. That's part of the game. But no, Christine Lagarde, head of the IMF, famously said, you know, if it had been Lehman Sisters instead of Lehman Brothers, you know, perhaps we wouldn't have seen the crisis start with that. And, you know, I can see women in the audience nodding. You know that if women are present, women act differently, more consensually, more risk averse, you know, more
sexy.
Maybe that too, Russell.